Welcome to Section 5 of the Code of Practice for the Care and Handling of Equine Educational Series. In this section, we are going to cover the recommendations and requirements for the care of horses in feedlots. Feedlots are centralized feeding operations where animals are fed concentrated feed mixtures to efficiently reach a target weight prior to slaughter. Other sections of this code can also apply to the feedlot industry, unless otherwise specified. We are going to start with Section 5.1, the handling of horses at loading and unloading. Horses transported to and from feedlots are loose-hauled, meaning they are not restrained in individual stalls or tied up, and are most often loaded in groups versus individually. Section 6.2 and Section 8.2 later in this series covers behavior and handling and other guidance on loading and unloading. Properly designed facilities are key to low-stress handling, and the most important part of any handling facility is the flooring and footing. The code requires that the ground in the holding pen must be well drained and non-slip. This is because horses can injure themselves if they slip or fall. Examples of non-slip surfaces include sand, dirt but not mud, and stamped or grooved concrete, as shown here. When designing or renovating a facility, ensure that the temporary holding pens, where horses are held for less than 24 hours, allow for a minimum of 7.6 to 9.1 square meters of area per horse. Gates, alleyways, and holding pens should be smooth and free from protrusions that may injure the horse. Alleyways should be built to the same height and spacing as corral and pen fencing, which is 1.7 to 1.8 meters high and 3.7 to 4.9 meters wide. Single file chutes that have solid sides should be a minimum of 81 centimeters wide, 1.8 meters high, and have a gap of approximately 30 centimeters at the bottom to allow for drainage. It is required that all horses must be handled in a manner that does not subject them to avoidable pain or avoidable injury. With proper handling, animals experience less stress and fear, and the risk of injury to the handler and the animals is greatly reduced. Handling should accommodate the animal's natural behavior and should be done in a calm manner. Section 5.2 addresses new arrivals at feedlots. Horses arriving at feedlots come from a variety of backgrounds and with varying degrees of training or no training at all. Therefore, they should be handled calmly and with caution. New arrivals may be tired, hungry, thirsty, and stressed due to transport, mixing with unfamiliar animals, and new surroundings. For this reason, upon arrival to the feedlot, horses must be individually assessed for health and well-being. They must be provided with water and good quality forage, and they must be grouped and managed in a way to minimize the risk of injury. Make sure that feed and water is easy to find, as new arrivals will not be familiar with its location and may only be familiar with natural water sources. You will need to monitor new arrivals at least twice daily to ensure they are healthy and are eating and drinking. Segregate horses of new arrivals according to age, sex, and size, and away from groups of resident horses for at least 7 days. This is for biosecurity and to alleviate some aggression from mixing with established horses. Segregation also allows for easy observation and monitoring of the new arrivals. Any horses arriving with shoes should have them removed upon arrival at the feedlot and before mixing with other horses. This is to lessen the chance of injury in case of a shod horse kicking another horse. Section 5.3 is on feeding. Feedlot horses must receive a diet that is adequate for maintaining health and vigor. They can be fed a ration of 60 to 70% grain, but overfeeding grain without gradual adjustments is associated with laminitis and other health conditions. For these reasons, you should introduce horses to the feedlot ration gradually over a minimum of 30 days and preferably 60 days. This will allow for a safe adjustment. As with all horses, consultation with a nutritionist or veterinarian to develop a feed management plan is highly recommended. It is recommended that you provide continuous access to forage to feedlot horses, but at a minimum, they must have daily access to forage that is free from visible mold and has minimal dust. Ensure that the horses have sufficient feed space by increasing the number of feed locations, increasing the amount of feed space at any single location, or rearrange the group so that competition is minimized. We will now address health management in Section 5.4. Health management and disinfection are particularly important in feedlots. Following is a list of requirements to help ensure effective health management at feedlots. You can find further information not included here in Section 4. Feedlot owners must establish and maintain a veterinary client-patient relationship, otherwise known as a VCPR, with a practicing veterinarian. This is not only a code requirement, it is also now the law in Canada. For more information on how to establish a VCPR, you can contact your veterinarian. A written biosecurity and disease management plan must be in place and developed with a veterinarian. Guidance on developing a biosecurity plan can be found in the biosecurity module in this series. Feedlot horses must be observed at least once a day for health and well-being. Segregate animals immediately if they show signs of illness. Feedlot horses requiring medical treatment must receive such treatment and be identified. Horses held over for a drug residue withdrawal period must be sufficiently healthy and sound to withstand this period without undue suffering. If this condition cannot be met, the horses should be euthanized. Records or receipts of treatments provided must be available. This should include date of treatment, condition being treated, type of medicine, and mode of administration. Drug withdrawal periods must be observed. For information on drug withdrawal periods, consult a veterinarian. Hospital pens must be available at all feedlots. They must provide shelter, bedding, dryness, have a source of feed and water, and must be cleaned between uses. The pens must be built so that they can be easily cleaned and disinfected. Hospital pens should be located so that contact is not possible between horses and adjoining pens and is at least 4.88 meters from pens used by healthy animals. Section 5.5 covers pen conditions and shelter. Mud management is especially important in the feedlot and can be a challenge, particularly during certain seasonal conditions, such as before winter freeze or during spring thaw. Insufficient bedding, poor drainage, and overcrowding also contribute to poor pen conditions. Muddy conditions will negatively impact a horse's welfare and impact weight gain, as dirty and wet coat conditions lowers the insulation capacity of the hair coat, possibly increasing the energy needs of the animal for maintenance. The animals will also have a reduced feed intake if they are reluctant to venture through muddy conditions to reach the feed bunks. Also, more energy is required for the animal to pull its hoof out of the mud, or if it spends more time standing if it is too uncomfortable lying in the mud. The two requirements within the code in regards to mud and pen conditions are that feedlot owners must have a plan for mud management and have access to any equipment necessary to implement the plan, and have a dry lying area available in each pen. In high rainfall areas, it may be very difficult to achieve the requirements without the provision of overhead shelter. Good mud management includes having well-drained sites, appropriate stocking densities, shelter, and a routine schedule for bedding changes and removal of manure. Protection from the wind should be provided, such as a 3-sided shed or windbreak fencing with 20% porosity. Pen and shelter recommendations include making sure there are solid, non-slip surfaces around feed and water sources, with drainage design so that it slopes from the feeding and watering areas at a slope of between 2 and 4%. Pens should be cleaned at least seasonally or more often as needed for individual facilities, and bedding kept clean in between. The final consideration is stocking density. Horses are social animals that establish a hierarchy within a group. The risk of injury to horses increases when they are overcrowded and competition for food, water, and space leads to aggression. For this reason, the code requires that at a minimum, each horse must have enough space to move easily, walk forward, turn around with ease, and lie down in a normal resting posture. There must also be sufficient space for subordinate horses to escape aggression. You have now reached the end of this section of the Equine Code of Practice training series. Please click the button below to return to the main Equine Code of Practice training page.